Hi, Sally. Thank you for joining me today.
Morning, Tracy.
Hi. I'm really excited. We chatted recently about your book, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I know you've got some feedback from that as well. But today you're going to join me and talk specifically about one particular gemstone and give me some wonderful little nuggets of information, I believe.
I am. I'm going to talk about rubies because it's July's birthstone. July is coming round very quickly. So I thought it'd be an interesting stone just to give a few little facts that I find interesting. Hopefully other people will too.
Fantastic. So tell me more.
Okay. So ruby is a variety of corundum. It's the red variety of corundum. If it's any other colour, it's a sapphire.
Oh,
And it gets its colour from chromium. And one of the things I find interesting and slightly frustrating is that there is no definitive cut-off point between ruby and pink sapphire.
oh, really?
Yeah, it's a subjective call. If you submit a stone to different laboratories, you may get different answers.
Oh,
And part of it is historical, part of it is cultural, and part of it is the location within the world where you are. It varies. So it's a little movable feast, that one. There's no definitive cut-off point.
that's
And
really interesting. I never knew that.
yeah, pink sapphire gets its colour from chromium as well. It just has far less of it.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Um,
But
the
sapphires come in loads of different color ranges as well, though, don't they? So
I'm sorry, say again?
they sapphires come in lots of different color ranges too, though, don't they?
They do, yeah. Blues, orange, yellow, green.
Amazing.
Love sapphires.
I do love a ruby because ruby works so well with silver clay because you can fire it in. So yeah, tell me more. I'm excited.
Okay, I'll talk a bit more about some of the treated rubies, which you'll need to be aware of if you're firing it in silver clay in a little while.
Okay.
That's a little top tip that I want people who work with silver clay to keep an ear out for. But all locations that produce ruby also produce pink sapphire.
Right.
Because again, it's the chromium, it's just the amount of chromium that's in the mix
That's in there.
that makes the difference.
Mm.
And gemologists can use inclusions within rubies to give an idea of its origin, to where it came from. Different origins have some different inclusions.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
So,
Yeah.
can you give us an example of that? Is there a particular location that can show something very specific?
There is. I'm going to have to consult my Bible because
Right.
they're many and varied. So let's have a look. In Thailand, you get, or can get, not always, irregularly shaped fluid inclusions with dark crystals at their centres.
Oh, okay.
So
So
just
they're
that,
like little bubbles, I guess, do they?
yes, yeah. Sometimes they can be quite long and thin, but it's something as a gemologist that you learn to identify a liquid filled inclusion or a liquid filled cavity.
Interesting.
Mm.
Oh,
The oldest rubies to date are from Greenland.
really?
They formed in the rock in Greenland, which is 2.7 billion years old.
You can't get your head around that, can you?
But it makes me feel young. And just sticking with stones themselves, the rough crystals are from the trigonal crystal system. So although they're called trigonal, they have 6 sides, which blows my mind because, come on, let's just make it simple. Trigonal, 3. Please don't mess with me. But it's how the atoms stack up inside the crystal that dictates the shape of the crystal itself.
Wow.
And sometimes on the surface, you can see triangular growth marks. And crystal healers call these stones record keepers. And they believe that they have great power and hold a lot of knowledge.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. Very interesting.
I know nothing about crystal healing. I just find it very interesting that they call them record keepers.
Yeah, yeah, amazing.
Hopefully, somebody one day will,
Explain that.
teach me a bit more about that. Going on to the colour of a ruby, many people will have heard it said that the pigeon's blood rubies from Burma are the best quality. But the interesting thing is that it's very rarely defined what pigeon's blood actually means, a definitive colour. And Burmese ruby dealers don't use this term.
Oh,
It first appeared in English in 1839,
wow.
but
So,
it's
so what do they call it then if they don't call it pigeon blood? They don't have a particular name for it.
no, they just have better rubies and
Oh, okay.
lower quality rubies. Yeah, yeah. Another fun thing, I'm so sad. Another fun thing about rubies is that they're pleochroic, so they can show two different colours depending on, excuse me, depending on the angle that the crystal's viewed.
Ah,
So red is the predominant one, but then you could get pink or orange or a purplish blue or a brown as a sort of secondary hue that comes through. And one thought is that the pigeon's blood is a stone that has no secondary hue. So it's just red.
right. Okay, that
Nothing else.
makes sense.
Yeah. But I'd still love to know where the history of pigeon's blood came from.
Yeah.
It's not a term that you would sort of think would add to the romance of a ruby or the
No, it doesn't give it any. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. It's not a nice term, is it?
no,
Really, it's not.
no. Another interesting thing about rubies is that the majority of them fluoresce under UV light, and certain stones fluoresce even in sunlight. They have a considerable fluorescence, and these stones, it sort of supercharges their colour. So if you looked at them in grey London, even though it's not grey today, but if you looked at them in grey London and then looked at them in, say, sunny India, where the UV is much greater, they will appear far more lively and supercharged in India than they will in a duller country.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Mm. And some of them can display an optical phenomenon called star effect or asterism. And this is where very fine rutiles are oriented in the crystal following its six-sided crystal structure, and they angle themselves at 60 degrees to each other. And if it's cut in a cabochon looking down on these 60-degree angles, as the light is reflected off these many, many little inclusions, you get a star pattern forming that appears to move across the surface of the stone.
That is amazing. Isn't nature amazing that it can do, create these crystals that are so uniform to create that asterism, and I just think that's phenomenal.
I, I do love optically phenomenal stones. They are one of my favourites because that's nature just really showing off and
Yeah,
doing her thing.
yeah, yeah, amazing, amazing.
Oh. And today's largest producer of rubies is Mozambique.
Oh, okay.
And gem fields are in partnership with the Mozambique government, and they are producing a lot of beautiful rubies out of Mozambique.
Fantastic.
But there are many countries around the world that are producing ruby at the moment, including, I have a list, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, India, Nepal, Pakistan, China, Afghanistan, Tanzania, Kenya, Mozambique, Madagascar, and Greenland.
Crikey. There's quite a few then.
There is, yeah. You would think, oh, well, it's such a valuable, rare, beautiful stone. There can't be many.
Location. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, it's a well spread across the world, the ruby.
Multi-locational stone. That's fantastic. Very
Mm.
interesting. Okay.
I thought another thing it would be interesting to talk about is some of the treatments, particularly for jewelers, to understand a little bit more about these, because one of the things that I learned as I started studying gemology was more about treatments. And I do feel that it's important that jewelers understand as much as they can about these, not just for themselves when they're working with the stones, but also when they're selling their jewelry, they know what they're selling. So over 95% of the rubies on the market at the moment are heat treated. And this is a process that's been going on for over 1,000 years. And what this will do is improve the colour or the clarity of a stone.
That's interesting.
Yeah, sapphires are heat treated as well, particularly the blue.
Oh,
So,
right.
yeah.
So they're subjected to particular temperature or put in the sun or
Yeah, it used to be a very um, artisan way of doing it with an
right.
open fire, and there was no controls over how it was done. It was just by eye. Now they can do it in kilns, and it's far more controlled.
Okay.
And another thing that they can do while they're heating the stone is, if they've got a stone that's got some fractures in it, they can include a material called a flux, and this, combined with heat, will start to heal the fracture.
Mm.
So you can see fracture healed, and these inclusions then appear as what are called feathers within the stone.
Oh, right. Okay.
And you can quite often see them quite clearly, and that gives you an indication that the stone has been flux healed.
Oh.
It's important to understand that only around 5% of stones, rubies on the market have not been heat treated, because if you do have one that hasn't been heat treated, it carries quite a price premium because of that fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. And quite often they will be certified by a laboratory to confirm that they have not been heat treated. And if somebody unknowingly repairs a piece of jewelry that's got a ruby in it that hasn't been heat treated, and they think, oh, yeah, I'll just do that little solder repair. I know rubies are fine. We'll just do that with a torch, bang with the torch. That can be enough to then devalue that stone because it's been subjected to heat.
Wow. And
So
does it change the color or the appearance of that stone, that
uh,
heat treatment?
yeah, the heat treatment can improve the colour and the clarity. So a treated stone is considered a less valuable stone than an untreated stone. And if it's inadvertently heated, it then becomes a treated stone, so its value diminishes.
How bizarre. Right, okay. That's really I never knew that. Well, there you go.
it's it's one of the strange sort of anomalies of our wonderful world of jewellery, but
Yes.
it's an interesting one for people to know about. They may never come across an unheated ruby in their lives, but just in case they do, it's nice to have that
Bit of
information
information.
just, yeah, just at the back of their mind, just in case.
Okay.
Rubies can also be treated if they have surface reaching fractures, so little cracks in the stone. those can affect the appearance of the stone. So it can be filled, or they can be filled with oil or resin or glass, and that just fills the fracture and it almost detracts the eye from it and improves the clarity of the stone as you look at it.
Fantastic.
Those aren't permanent though. So if you pop an oil or resin filled into an ultrasonic, you're likely to rattle the oil out for sure.
Wow.
That's going to change the appearance. If you again go to repair a ring that's got a glass filled ruby in it, the heat from the torch will melt the glass because that's got a lower melting point than ruby. So it could get interesting and a little bit exciting. But the treatment that's been around since 2004 is where industrial grade ruby that is heavily fractured and translucent and not really that special is filled with lead glass. And it's filled while it's still rough, because if you tried to cut it before filling it, you just couldn't. The structure of it is not strong enough to withstand cutting and polishing. So by filling it with the lead glass, that stabilizes it, sort of glues it all together, and then it can be cut and polished, and you've got a nice shiny red ruby.
Wow.
But it could be up to 70 to 80% glass.
Gosh.
Mm,
Wow.
yes. So this is one you really need to have your wits about you when you're looking at rubies and just think about, what exactly am I buying?
Right. Okay. So how would you know that a ruby is 60 or 70% glass? How would you know? How would you be able to identify that? Has the seller got to declare that, or is there some kind of mark or indication?
In an ideal world, the seller would declare. Uh, but as in any place where money is to be made,
Oh.
there are those that don't, either through ignorance because they weren't told when they bought it and they're selling it on, or those that choose not to disclose that information.
That's amazing.
So one of the things you can do is, if you look at the surface of a ruby under reflected light, so the light's coming down and bouncing off the surface, you may be able to see a difference in luster between the ruby and the glass. And you'll see little zigzag lines running across the surface potentially. And
Wow.
that's an indicator that you've got two different materials there.
That's so interesting. Wow.
But
I'm going to look out for that next time I
yeah,
buy a ruby. I'm going to get my jeweler's loop out and have
that's
a
what you need.
yeah, good hard look at it.
Yeah, you just need your loop and a good light source, and just check the surface, the facet surfaces, just to see if you can see that difference.
Interesting. So interesting.
They can also glass fill star rubies as well. So don't automatically assume that a star ruby is not glass filled, lead glass filled.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
It's an interesting area of gemology that I find fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. You assume a gemstone is a gemstone, and you know, it's pure out of the ground, if you know what I mean. I never
Yeah,
imagined that you could start to fill them and kind of, yeah. I know you can create like CZs, and there are um lab created gemstones and things
yeah.
like this, but if you buy something as a pure gemstone out of the ground, I never imagined that you could start to fill it with resins or glass, or that was never on my radar.
But there's also other treatments for rubies and sapphires where you can diffuse elements into the surface of the stone to improve the colour or change the colour. It's a
Fascinating.
huge subject,
Yeah,
huge subject. But
fascinating.
another interesting one that's been seen is a doublet. So that's two different parts that are joined together to make it look like one whole stone, where the crown above the girdle, the widest point, is a natural green sapphire. So if you looked at it, you would see natural inclusions and it would look normal.
Right.
But the pavilion, the bottom part below the girdle, is synthetic ruby.
Huh.
And somehow, when you look from the top and look down at the stone, the green is cancelled out. I don't know the physics of why, it just is. And you see a red ruby, but it's got a sliver of natural sapphire on the top, and the rest is synthetic.
That's amazing.
They're
Wow.
quite a funny shape as well, because the crown tends to be quite shallow, because that's the natural stone, so don't want to spend too much on that.
Yeah.
Pavilion tends to be quite big and bulbous and
Oh,
quite large, because they're sold on weight.
oh, okay. Cunning.
Oh yes.
Very cunning. Very cunning.
And you were mentioning synthetic gemstones,
Yeah.
and from a gemologist point of view, a synthetic gemstone is one that has a natural equivalent, and it has the same optical, chemical, and physical properties as the natural stone. And you can get synthetic corundum, synthetic ruby, different ways of growing these crystals. The first was Venet flame fusion method of growing, and that was in 1902.
Wow.
Yeah, so we think we're very advanced now with all these wonderful things we can do, but 1902, I find that astonishing.
Yes. Yeah.
And in 1915, I discovered this when we visited Buckler's Hard in the New Forest. I find gem information anywhere. I'm like a homing pigeon, I'm there. So in 1915, the SS Persia was torpedoed and sunk off the coast of Crete by a German U-boat, and it was carrying a Maharaja's gold and jewels. And in 2003, I have to keep looking at numbers. I can't keep
Fine.
numbers.
That's fine. That's fine.
I'm good with facts, not with numbers. 2003, a British company went to reclaim and salvage some of the cargo from this ship, and they recovered 432 rubies, amethysts, and moonstones. And amongst those were some of the earliest synthetic rubies.
Wow.
How did he get hold of them? Interesting.
Well, yeah, that's one of those wonderful mysteries, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And just a final thought on rubies for people and synthetic corundum. If they are wearing a watch that has sapphire crystal glass in it, that will be synthetic corundum. So they'll have a nice big slab of sapphire sat on their wrist.
right.
And if they have a watch that's described as having so many jewels in its mechanic or mechanism, nowadays those jewels are little tiny pieces of synthetic ruby, which are used as bearings to reduce the friction within the movement of the watch.
Wow. Wow. Well, there you go.
So that's some of my favourite fun facts about rubies.
Thank you so much. That's been really interesting.
Oh, you're
Educated,
welcome.
educated me. No end on that one. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So before we go, Sally, just give us a little recap on your book and what we can find in your book, all the wonderful nuggets of information and where we can find to buy it.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. it came about because I realised that with just a little bit more, or with a little bit of gemological information, jewelers could work with gemstones with less risk of incidents like cracking stones and things happening. And there was nothing out there that could quickly say, don't do this, you're safe to do this, take care doing this. There are some truly beautiful coffee table books with the most stunning photos of gems, and I may have a few in my own collection, not all of them. But there was nothing for jewelers to actually use as a little workhorse to just quickly say, oh, I'm about to do this with an amethyst, is that okay?
Mm.
So I decided to write a book, and that grew a bit like Topsy. And I kept trying to shoehorn a bit more information in and a bit more, and then had to stop myself saying, no, you're going way off course now. Let's just keep it to the essentials. So one of the things in there is for metal clay artists. At the back, there's a table, and it gives details of natural and synthetic and man-made stones that may or may not survive torch firing, kiln firing, but also just a little warning to say you may have done it once with a stone of this variety, but every stone is different. Every stone may have different inclusions, different areas of weaknesses. So please don't assume that if you've done it once, every stone you do it with will survive. Like the ruby, if you were lucky enough to have a natural ruby with no fillings, it would survive and it would be lovely. But if you had a lead glass filled one, oh, that would be a horrible, nasty mess.
Mm. Fantastic. Fantastic. So we can get hold of this wonderful book from your own website.
You can indeed, yes. Yeah.
So that's
www.sallyspencer.co.uk.
Fantastic. I'm just going to grab your book here. So there you go. This is the wonderful book. It's here. And you've got the website there on the back. So it is a great book. Fantastic little book, and I know a few people who picked it up and said, yeah, they've enjoyed it too. They've found it a real godsend. So thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your time in having a chat with me today. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I hope we can catch up again sometime.
That would be lovely.